the mystery of the gospel fulfilled, which is Christ in you. Realize that their imagination is there to serve them, to help produce in their life who they want to be, what they want to do, and what they want to have. That the power of their imagination, magi, nation, that they can create their life, they can write their story by utilizing the pen of their imagination.
No human being can fathom what God has prepared for those who love Him. Seen, heard, imagined.
Have you or someone you've known ever been a part of a cult? Well, I want to welcome you to this episode of Seen, Heard, Imagined, the spiritual podcast that's dedicated to helping you connect to our Creator. And I want to welcome our actor, storyteller, and storytelling coach, Darius Wallace. He has been in several Hollywood movies. He is a founding member of Tennessee Shakespeare in Memphis, Tennessee. And he has performed all over the country in thousands of schools and libraries, universities, and theaters. And he's also been the TEDx Memphis coach for 7 years. Now, there was a time when Darius was broken and broke. He struggled with anxiety, depression, and fear, limiting beliefs, and suicidal thoughts. Through the intervention of his high school vice principal, Darius was introduced to his high school theater teacher, who taught him the power of communicating through storytelling as an actor. Welcome, Darius.
Thank you. Thank you. It's actually Darius.
Darius. Oh my goodness. Thank you for correcting me. I appreciate that. Darius. Thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah. Actually, the emphasis is on the re, so it's Darius.
Darius. Thank you. I appreciate that. Always feel free to correct me. I could be
That's
bad
it.
with
Yeah.
names, and it's a
Oh,
beautiful, unique pronunciation as well. And I know you're located in Memphis, Tennessee today, but you travel a lot. And you've had some recent projects that I've heard about. Do you mind just telling us about them? Because they're exciting.
sure. So I'm a split time between Georgia and Memphis, and there are a couple of exciting things happening. One is there's a movie, my first starring role, that has just been released to Amazon and Apple TV called Damaged Goods. Just found that out a couple of days ago. And then I'm directing a movie called Fifth Step in a few weeks here in Memphis. And also constantly traveling with my show on Frederick Douglass. And I'm working on a brand new one person show, which is my story. That'll have its world premiere in April.
Oh, that's exciting. You've been very busy. That's great, though. I can't wait to take a look at your Amazon premiere as well. So, very cool.
Thank you.
Now, Darius, what does it mean to you to be a believer?
Um, it really means, there's two scriptures in the Bible that reflect what I really believe. And Jesus, or Yeshua, right, said, if someone is looking for the kingdom of God and pointing to it being out there, don't pay attention, but that the kingdom of God is within you. And in the Aramaic, which is what they spoke during that time, it also says, and all around you, meaning that even the things you see within them is the kingdom. And then Paul later in those letters said the mystery of the gospel fulfilled, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory. So when I think of what it means to be a believer, I believe in God within me.
It's beautiful. I love that. I love that. Now, there was a time in your life when you were lost, you didn't know what or who to believe in. Can you tell us about that? And I believe that was just early on in your youth, right?
Yeah, back during that time, my father was Muslim, Nation of Islam Muslim. My mother was Church of God in Christ. Quite the combination. Um, and, you know, both parents instilled a lot of great things in my brother and I. But of course, those two different ideas flowing through the house, can cause a lot of questions. Eventually, I did convert to Christianity, actually. And, you know, when I went to college, I was about 13 when I converted. When I went to college, I was 17, and then I had this other experience that at first seemed to be beneficent, but then became malignant because even though there was the proclamation of Christianity, it turned out to be something more along the lines of a cult. And probably the worst experience of my life, that particular organization back during that time. But there's certain things you can't control that will come about in your life. It's really what you do with it that determines your destiny. And so that definitely put a halt on things. It stopped things. It was very traumatic. But then I made a decision to do something with it, and which is basically I gave up acting for that cult, and returning to acting was one thing that I was able to do about it. But then the other thing too was to really discover the truth of what my personal relationship to God means to me, which I believe is better for anyone than your relationship to God to be based on someone else's relationship with God.
Yeah. Gosh. That's a young age to have been influenced to join a cult or an organization like this. What can you tell us about how you met members of this cult organization?
Well, it was a college campus ministry, and they were playing, I think, as a tool to draw people in, a very powerful movie called Jesus of Nazareth. It was actually a miniseries in the 70s. And Robert Powell, who's a phenomenal actor, he's passed away now, played Jesus and played so convincingly that you thought he was Jesus. He was just that great of an actor. There are other great actors that were. It was just a great, well done um, miniseries. So they were playing that. So that kind of hooked you in. And then there was the appearance of what would be, a community of believers. And I do believe that there were people, as when I made the posts online, someone from that time that I knew reached out to me on Facebook and was glad that I put that out there because of what he went through too. And he's still, I think, suffering emotionally potentially from that experience, as I know several others who were with me during that period of time. And so there were some people that were sincere, but I think it was taking that we were taking advantage of by the leaders of that community, which is what often happens in cults. They It's normally a charismatic leader that is narcissistic, and it's either their way or no way.
So, what are some examples of how you felt that you were taken advantage of being a member of this community?
Well, probably the biggest one was being convinced by them that being an actor was not of God, and that I needed to let go of being in school. I would say that that was probably the most malignant and damaging thing. Also, too, there was a display. I didn't understand it at the time because whenever I would run into it at that time, especially in a church setting, it was always baffling to me. But there was racism too, and so how is it possible for the Holy Spirit and racism to exist in the same place at the same time? And It's a mystery. But that was the other thing too that was very, just very prevalent.
From your perspective, how do you think that your childhood or your upbringing might have played a role into you being susceptible to being a part of this kind of community?
I think it's the when we think religion and we place God out here or somewhere up in the sky, or there's a term in our culture, well, the religious culture, called the big God idea, big God, which means, normally represented by weather, thunder, lightning, earthquakes, something very frightening, basically. Um, and that you're to believe in something out here, and that if you, in the words of a comedian, that tells you, if you don't do what I say, then you're going to burn forever in hell. And by the way, I love you.
Right. Oh my goodness.
So and then also too, just the misunderstanding of what I've come to understand to be really an African, um, and a form of ministry that made its way into the Middle East and Asia, which is the art of telling the truth through stories that are universal in nature. And then you believe in the story beyond the truth. And I think that it's the manipulation of the mind, um, that can interrupt households, that can interrupt families, that we buy into because we're afraid of the invisible, which is, we're afraid to go to hell. We want to go to heaven. We want to go to heaven. We're afraid to go to hell. And it's kind of like carrot dangling, right? And or chasing a rainbow that you think is there, but it's not. And it's because we're constantly being told to look outside of ourselves when everything that we need is within, and that all the scriptures are there to help us understand, I believe, the two things that were told to us, which is the kingdom of God is within you. The mystery of the gospel is Christ in you, the hope of glory. So I think, being brought up in a religious household, my parents certainly wasn't being malignant. They were doing the best that they could as parents, and they only gave us the best of what they felt was the best, if that makes sense. But it did, I think, play a role in me, but I will say too, there were other things my parents instilled in me that played a role in my recovery.
And it's so fascinating that you had a Church of Christ member as a parent and then a Muslim as a
Hmm.
parent. Did it seem,
Church of God in
growing up, did
Christ.
it seem at, oh, thank you, Church of God in Christ. Thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah.
Did it seem confusing at all, or as a child, what they would share with you or what they would demonstrate to you or minister to you? Did it seem confusing at all, or was it just okay, whatever mom and dad says, it just is, despite the differences in their own personal belief systems?
Yeah, I would say that when you were with dad, what he said was right. When you were with mom, what she said was right. Because it wasn't like you didn't get time out in those days. You got knocked out.
That's
you
right.
know. So
Yes,
whatever.
that's right.
you know. But it was confusing, but at the same time, their love for one another though made all the difference in the world. It was their love for one another that was the truth that overcame the doctrine.
That's really beautiful. I love that that was demonstrated to you. That's really lovely. Now, for you in hindsight, what are some signs that you missed out on before kind of falling prey to being a part of a cult organization, just looking back, had I realized that that was a yellow flag or a red flag, I would have chosen differently.
It's interesting you should ask that because I've replayed it over and over again, and I don't know that I ever would have made any different decision based on who I was at the time. I was so young at that time, and it wasn't like now. You got to
Mm,
imagine this is the 80s. You didn't have access to a massive amount of information back during that time. Um, and
true.
it was a whole lot easier to be susceptible to things back during that period compared to now. Information didn't travel as fast. We were told back during that
Mm,
time, I think this was 86, 87. I think it was, yeah, 88, that Jesus was coming back and that the world was going to end. There was this book by this popular evangelical, Hal Lindsey, mentioned that Jesus was coming back in
mm.
1988, according to his calculations. And then eventually it was moved to 1992. And then it was moved to 1998. And then it was moved to 2000.
Right.
And I think
Finally
they
threw
gave
in the
up.
towel. The organization that you were a part of, was there a lot of proclaimed knowings that they had deep insight into things, and so hence you should be totally reliant on the way they think, how they believe you should function? Yeah. Is there anything that sticks out to you that you recall them?
Yeah, the leader of it was called himself a prophet. And I was telling my daughter this: you have to be careful of people that speak over you, their words, because if you believe that, then you'll believe anything. Um, it does say in the Bible that the word of the prophet will be confirmed, and the first confirmation should be within yourself. But when you lean to someone else's words, well, my goodness. And then there's something very powerful about belief. When you believe into it, um, it can
Mm-hmm.
manifest for you, for better or for worse.
When did you decide to leave, or how did you get out? Was it an easy process? Was it difficult for you? Tell us that story.
It was easy. It's funny. I play Frederick Douglass, and it's interesting when you read his autobiography. He just left. I mean, of course, there's a lot of circumstances surrounding it all, but he literally just left. There was the threat of death and jail. Imagine that you can be put into jail on the plantation. Um, but he had a plan and a strategy and the whole thing. That's a whole other story. But one morning he left, and it was the same with me. I was sitting with one of the members who was more balanced in his thinking, and he was probably maybe 20 years older, maybe 25 years older than me. I can't remember, but he looked over at me and he said, uh, you know, get out of here. You don't need this. You're better than this. Just get out of here. Don't stay. And he said it with such truth and such compassion and such relaxed conviction that it wasn't long after that I was gone. But unfortunately, the the word of the prophet, right, can haunt you and follow you even after leaving. And so I think that that's the other damaging thing is that when you're involved with any kind of mind control or manipulation or any kind of interaction with narcissists, it can follow you into the future if you let it. And so, but there's this beautiful in the Hebrew uh, culture of religion. There's the 72 names of God or the 72 attributes of God. And the first one, and I wish I can remember the name, the pronunciation of the name, but it's summed up in time travel. God's name meaning time travel. What does that mean? That you have the ability to go back and rewrite and release the past so that you can then be more present to create a new future.
So your friend stayed in the cult, likely because it was just what he knew, what was comfortable for him. One can compare this to how Peter decided to leave the boat when Jesus was walking on water towards the boat in the middle of a storm, in the middle of the lake. Peter had enough faith to get out and walk towards the Lord. And so that boat has carried your friend all these years. What do you think? How does that make you feel knowing that?
I'm at peace with it because everyone has their own path, and what might not be something for someone may be something for someone else. It's really not for me to judge, and so my hope is that he's happy. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, I certainly have found happiness since that time. So my hope is really that he's happy. The disciples were probably happy in that boat. It was Peter who
Mm-hmm.
wanted to get out on the water, and he was the one that took the risk. He was also the one that sank, but he also was the one that found out what the real rock was. He cried
Mm.
out, and when he cried out, Jesus picked him up, and he was back walking on the water.
Mm-hmm.
Became one of the main disciples, and then also in the book of Acts, he's a force to be reckoned with.
He's the rock boy, the rock of the
Yeah,
church.
that's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And so it to me that means that there's something within us that wants to step out into the waters of faith to achieve our destiny, to achieve our purpose. There's a part of us that's so much more comfortable back on the boat.
Mm-hmm.
But there's that other part, though, that must get out and try. And that's going to make all the difference. If we stay on the boat, uh, more than likely that the fact that we didn't get out into the waters may haunt us. It may, um, we'll never know if we don't try to take a step out on faith. I've been the person that in other circumstances that stayed on the boat, and under those circumstances, I was not happy because I knew there was something in me wanting to get out and walk on the water. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I'm happy for you. I'm happy that you did. When you left, you said you'd quit acting and acting school. Did you end up going back and finishing your degree?
No, I didn't. I During that period of time, I wandered for a while. I didn't really know what I wanted to do in life, and but it was still burning within me to want to do it. But I thought it was over for good, and I didn't even think about. I was talking to someone else about this, and I realized I became a custodian at the university in Flint, Michigan, and there was a young girl that we were working together, and we joke around a lot. And when she discovered I was an actor, she basically was like, "What are you doing here?" And she really convinced me to get back into it. I didn't even remember that until maybe a month ago. So I really wish I could thank her. Yeah, I was trying, I was trying to recall. I tell my story a lot. I was trying to recall, and I remembered that. I'll never forget her. And I auditioned for a play at the university. Got the role. Ended up leaving the custodian job, but I think I started security. But then I my first professional acting job came right after that because there was an audition for Michigan Shakespeare Festival. I auditioned and got it, and it was my first paying acting job, and that was the beginning of my career.
Wow. Wow. And just almost like you were able to pick up where you left off. Your destiny was saved by a simple word from this young lady.
Yeah, yeah, by a simple word. I hope I'm looking at you. I was trying to look at the. Am I looking at you? I
Yeah,
hope
you
so.
looking at me.
Okay, good.
You got me.
Yeah, yeah, it really, really was. I wish I could. I would love. When I do my show, my own personal story, the world premiere is called "Letters, Lies, and Love."
Wow.
These are the people that I want to invite to see the show. I wish I knew her name. Even I can't even think of her name. I don't know how we'll ever find her, but I wish I could invite her. I wish I could get in touch with Ted, is his name, and
Mm-hmm.
um, one of the gang members I found out is still alive. That I can get in touch with him, and if Mr. Bronson, and so there are people in my story that I wish could come see the show,
Yeah.
um, because they made such they had such an amazing impact on my life, and so yes, she was played a pivotal role.
I love that. Well, what kind of questions do you think that one should ask members of a religious community before they get deeply involved, before they commit? What kind of questions would you ask, especially to avoid maybe falling into a cult?
I think probably it could really just be one question.
Hmm.
Um, do you, or if you're talking to someone, does your pastor make it the priority to serve the people?
Wow.
Most pastors, bishops, prophets are being served by the people. Now, most first ladies, bishops, pastors, they're being served by the people.
That's good.
But are they willing to do what Jesus said? The greatest of you shall be the servant of all. The greatest of you should be the least. You know, Jesus was washing the disciples' feet, got to Peter. Peter said, I can't let you do this. Jesus said, if you don't let me do this, you can't have any of me.
That's so good.
I must do this because this is what you must do. So that's the question. The one question: if there's no real service, no real laying down of life for the people, then no.
You're like, nope,
Absolutely,
not for me. Not for me.
absolutely not.
Oh
Because
my
that means the
goodness.
people are not going to serve each other.
And it's all about this charismatic leader at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's all
Secretly
about. It's
getting
all
seats.
about. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about. There is something wrong, in my opinion. There's nothing wrong with a prosperous leader, but there is something wrong if the church is also not prosperous.
I like that.
You know, yeah. If
I
everybody
like
else is struggling and you're prosperous, there really is something wrong with that. But if you see a prosperous church full of people that are thriving, um, that makes sense.
just one question. I really like
Yeah,
that. Oh my goodness. I've never thought about that. That it's that
yeah,
simple
yeah,
to get that question answered thoroughly. And also, I would argue if you are attending someone's new church, you're going to a new church, do you see evidence of this, of service from the pastor or the leadership to others? Do you see wellness and prosperity? Now, we know that churches are, in my opinion, a church is also a form of a hospital. That's where the sick, the broken, the lost go. But do you see others there to help them work through what they're going through? Do you
hmm
see the pastor shepherding those people? And I mean in very tangible ways, emotional ways, physical ways, financial
yeah,
ways, even, I would argue. do they
Hmm.
do that for their church members? And to your point, a charismatic, narcissistic leader is not going to consistently show up in that manner for their congregation. That's
No,
good.
I tell you what, there's in this period of the divisiveness, the thing that I find comfort in is Revelation 7:9. Let me see if I can find it so I don't misquote. uh, all this, racism, separatism within the church, within the evangelical world. Um, but God wins in the end. Revelation 7:9. After this I beheld, and lo, a great multitude which no man could number, of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues, stood before the throne and before the Lamb. God wins in the end. Um, and I saw that in one place, and this is in the 80s, by the way. Times Square Church in Manhattan, founded by David Wilkerson, who founded that church by ministering to gang members of New York, as well as drug addicts and prostitutes. And when I went to visit that church, this is the 80s now. It's one of the most amazing things I'd ever seen in my life. It was massively diverse. There were Africans and Asians and Europeans and white people and black people and just on and on. And I'm talking about, this is a mega church in the 80s. And one of the deacons, who was an assassin at one point in his life, he said a little girl witnessed to him, and he gave his heart to the Lord in Canada. He uh, we met him, and one of the things he often did was go out and feed the hungry in Manhattan, and we would go out with him. And so there was this massive amount of everybody ministering to everybody. I've never seen anything like it. Haven't really seen anything since. And they say eventually, my friend of mine from back during that time said eventually that guy actually went back to Canada and turned himself in. But he was a hitman.
That is so fascinating. Oh my
So,
goodness.
so here's a church that's taking the gospel seriously
Yes.
in the midst of a time in the 80s, which is this, what we're going through now is going back more like to the 40s and 50s and what have you. But the 80s was nothing like 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It also was, a time of, more racism than not, and more separate and segregation than not. So this church was a standout representation of, because the only Jesus that anybody will ever see is the church.
Yeah.
And that was probably the best representation of what Christianity could be.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, we don't get that. The mass media, anyway, doesn't show that. It really shows the malignant part of the church, and massively promotes what that is. But that's not the truth of what the church is.
That's right. Oh, that sounds awesome. I wasn't familiar with this church, and you're getting me excited. I would love to see if there's some footage of that particular pastor in action and that church in action.
Yeah, there was Crossing the Switchblade was the movie that was made about David Wilkerson's life back. It was probably back in the 70s. I think it was probably one of the first Christian movies. That'll give you an idea. I think his son runs it now, but I'm sure if you Google Times Square Church and you just or YouTube it, I'm sure the past will come up and you can see uh, how diverse what I experienced was back during that time.
Exciting. Thank you. Thank you for that. Definitely will look into it. Yeah. Now, I'm curious to know, how can viewers just get to know more about you, learn about some of the projects you've been on?
Sure. Well, you can. come to me on YouTube, Darius Wallace. Just put that in. A bunch of stuff will come up. Also, I'm on TikTok. Who knew? A bunch of stuff will come up. uh, yeah, Facebook and Instagram. Then also to my website, dariuswallace.com. So any of those spaces and places, you can learn more about me, what I do, and what's happening in my life as far as film, television, theater, and I'm also a coach. I coach speakers, presenters. I've been coaching for a decade now, and was this TEDx Memphis coach for 7 years, as you said earlier. And I work with teenagers all the way up to corporate executives and entrepreneurs and thought leaders, helping them become better presenters using acting skills, things from my toolbox to help them really thrive on the stage. I'll say that there's a lot of coaches that are out there that primarily deal with the structuring of the story, but still leave a lot of students hanging as to the ability to tell the story.
Mm.
And I'm an expert in helping you thrive in being the storyteller.
Mm.
Yeah.
Love
So
that. Yeah. All right. Great. We'll definitely be sharing that information.
thank you.
Now, before we go, what prayer or well wish can I pass on from you to the next guest?
That they would realize that their imagination is there to serve them, to help produce in their life who they want to be, what they want to do, and what they want to have. That the power of their imagination, magi, nation, that they can create their life, they can write their story by utilizing the pen of their imagination.
In this podcast tradition, I have got to share with you the prayer that the previous guest had for you, your family, and your friends.
Oh, great.
May the Lord bless you and your family and expand your territories mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, financially, and relationally. May the Lord have you go where He'd have you to go. Be who He'd have you to be and say what He'd have you to say. And that the words of your mouth and the meditations of your heart, and the actions and reactions of your body, may they be pleasing and acceptable in the Lord's sight.
Oh, great. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think that resonates so well considering that you are an actor, you're a speaking coach, you have that power and authority and influence in the
Yes.
world to do just those things. So thank you so much for spending time with me, sharing your story, a very personal story at that. I really
Yes.
love this conversation.
Yeah, me too. I had a lot of fun. This has been great. I really appreciate you too.
Yeah, and we'll have to get together the next time you're in Memphis.
Yes, yes, that'd be great. And we should do this again in the
We
future.
should. We should get an update, see how things are going. Do you or someone you love need the power of prayer? Is there a challenge you're facing that only our Creator can help you overcome? Then share it with this community by leaving a comment below this video or using our contact form on the Seen, Heard, Imagined website to share it privately. I'd love to pray for you, have others encourage you, or even send you a personalized prayer to address your unique situation. Thanks for watching and listening.